The town of Aral was the epicenter of this region's once prosperous industry. It's hard to imagine, just 40 years ago, this was a bustling fishing port.
Once the fourth largest body of fresh water in the world, the Aral Sea was a thriving region, supplying nearly 1/4 of the country's fresh fish. But during the early years of Soviet rule, a scheme was developed to divert the two major rivers that fed the Aral in order to supply massive irrigation to cotton fields upstream. The result has been one of the most striking eco-disasters of all time.
There was a beautiful sea with waves coming up to the beach. It was wonderful. There were no fish in the Soviet Union like the fish in Aral. We thought that gradually life would get better.
The rivers that fed the sea were diverted to irrigate plantations created during the Soviet era. Since the 1960s, over 90% of the sea has disappeared. The exposed seabed extends for hundreds of kilometers, leaving ships marooned in this newly created desert. Aid from the World Bank has been used by the government to build a dam at the sea's northernmost tip. The dam is now at full capacity, and although it hasn't brought the sea back to the town of Aral, it has helped other local communities.
By the late 90s, only 8 houses were left in this village, out of 90 houses. But when they built the dam, it improved. People are coming from all over the place and fishing here.
Here in Aral, people are hopeful that one day the sea will come back to their town too, and provide a future for their children.
I'm in Uzbekistan, exploring one of the most bizarre landscapes I've ever seen. An entire fleet of fishing vessels laying helplessly in the middle of a desert that once was the Aral Sea. A huge water diversion project, masterminded by the government of the now defunct Soviet Union, literally choked off the lifeblood of this once mighty body of water. So when you were a boy, these ships were working every day?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, and we swimming here because I remember Aral Sea here, this place.
Where we're standing right now used to be many meters underwater.
Yeah, usually original here 16 meters.
16 meters deep.
16 meters deep.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Now, how close is the water now?
150, 200 kilometers from
Really?
here.
That far?
Yeah.
And every year it's going a little further?
Yeah, every month.
Every month?
Yeah.
That fast?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
One of the really neat things to do in Landsat is look at change through time, of course. And one of the most dramatic changes anywhere in the globe in terms of environmental change is the Aral Sea. And the story is that the Aral Sea is an inland salt lake. At one time it was a productive fishery, salt lake though, so it wasn't a source of agricultural water. But the rivers that ran into it are a source of agricultural water, and they were also the source of all of the water in the Aral Sea. All along the rivers, the Sir Daria and the Amur Daria, there's irrigation that's been developed since the 1950s when the Soviet Union had a big push. So there are irrigation fields in some areas in large patches, and then in other places just following close to the river. Just south of the lake is a massive area of irrigation. And all of this irrigation is taking all the water that was going to the lake, and the lake is dried up. And you can see just from 1999 forward that the North Aral Sea, the small part on the top, is shrinking for a while and then stays fairly stable. They've dammed that off from the southern lobe, and then the large southern lobe on the right-hand side completely dries up in 2009. It's made some recovery since then with some decent rain, but they've pretty much written off the lower part of the lake as hopeless. It's just going to be dry, and it has a real negative impact on the area beyond the lake in that all of the minerals that have dried in the bottom of the lake and the pesticides and so on are being blown around the area, salinizing croplands and causing health problems.
The disappearance of the Aral Sea was a tragedy for the local people, and one they are still coming to terms with. Rustam Qabil, BBC News.